America's Energy Independence Revolution. How Geothermal Power Can Secure Our Nation's Future. By Ken Howard. Epigraphs. A country without energy independence isn't a country with independence at all. Adapted from Thomas Jefferson. The nation that leads in clean energy will be the nation that leads the world. Barack Obama. Energy is the currency of the universe. Master it, and you master your future. Adapted from Carl Sagan. Preface. Right under everyone's feet, there's enough clean, abundant, safe energy to meet our entire country's needs for billions of years. Growing up, my father worked as a union laborer, and he knew the value of hard work, reliability, and securing a future for the next generation. He and his fellow workers built America's infrastructure, highways, bridges, and pipelines, laying the foundation for our economic growth. They understood that a nation's strength depends on its ability to produce and control its own resources. Throughout history, the United States has risen to every major challenge through bold innovation. When America needed to develop nuclear technology before its enemies, we launched the Manhattan Project, a massive mobilization of science, engineering, and industry that changed the course of history. When President Eisenhower saw the necessity of an interconnected highway system, we built the interstate system, transforming commerce, travel, and national security. Now, we face a new challenge: securing America's energy future. For over a century, we have relied on coal, oil, and gas to power our national grid. In the 1970s, following the oil embargoes, we turned to nuclear power, but disasters like 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima created widespread public fear and halted further expansion. As a result, the U.S. remained dependent on fossil fuels, leaving our economy and national security vulnerable to foreign powers, price manipulation, and conflicts over energy resources. But today, thanks to new breakthroughs, a better way exists. One that eliminates the need for wars over oil, prevents energy embargoes from crippling our economy, and ensures permanent energy independence. Geothermal energy. For decades, geothermal was considered geographically limited, only viable in select volcanic regions like Iceland or the western United States. But that's no longer the case. A company called Ever has developed technology that makes geothermal power available anywhere. Their revolutionary closed-loop system allows deep drilling into the Earth's heat without requiring underground water reservoirs, fracking, or emissions. Just as the Manhattan Project transformed warfare and the interstate system revolutionized transportation, this geothermal breakthrough has the potential to transform energy. With it, we can modernize the U.S. electrical grid, create millions of jobs, and eliminate our reliance on foreign energy, while drastically reducing emissions without sacrificing reliability. For every $1 the U.S. invests in infrastructure, it gets back more than $9 in economic benefits. Energy independence will pay for itself, driving growth and innovation across every industry. This book outlines a bold 10-year plan to transition the U.S. to geothermal power, unlock trillions in economic benefits, and secure our energy independence once and for all. It's time to build the future. Chapter 1. How America Became Dependent on Coal, Oil, and Gas. Right under everyone's feet, there's enough clean, abundant, safe energy to meet our entire country's needs for billions of years. Yet, for over a century, America has been trapped in an endless cycle of dependence on fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. This reliance wasn't inevitable, but rather a result of historical circumstances, economic incentives, and political maneuvering that shaped our nation's energy infrastructure. The rise of fossil fuels. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, America's Industrial Revolution was fueled by coal. It powered factories, heated homes, and drove steam engines that connected the nation. As technology advanced, Oil and natural gas became the next great energy sources, spurred by the rise of the automobile and the rapid expansion of electric power grids. Oil was especially critical. With the discovery of massive oil fields in Texas, California, and later Alaska, America positioned itself as the world's energy superpower. The abundance of cheap energy helped drive economic growth, fueling industries from manufacturing to transportation. Natural gas followed a similar trajectory, with advancements in drilling and pipeline infrastructure making it a dominant energy source for electricity generation and heating. By the mid-20th century, America was firmly reliant on these three fossil fuels, believing them to be the only viable sources of energy at scale. The shift to nuclear power and the backlash. By the 1970s, the vulnerabilities of fossil fuel dependence became painfully clear. The oil embargo of 1973, imposed by OPEC nations, sent shockwaves through the U.S. economy, causing fuel shortages, skyrocketing prices, and long lines at gas stations. In response, the government sought alternative energy sources to reduce dependence on foreign oil. Nuclear power emerged as the leading contender. During the 1970s and 1980s, nuclear power plants were built across the country, offering a seemingly limitless supply of electricity. However, public perception shifted dramatically following the 1979 Three Mile Island accident in Pennsylvania, where a partial meltdown raised fears about nuclear safety. The situation worsened in 1986 when the Chernobyl disaster in the Soviet Union resulted in a catastrophic explosion, releasing radiation across Europe. The final blow to nuclear expansion came in 2011, when Japan's Fukushima disaster exposed the risks of nuclear energy in the face of natural disasters. These events created a widespread public distrust of nuclear power, halting new plant construction in the U.S. and forcing the nation to double down on fossil fuels once again. The cost of fossil fuel dependence. As a result of these historical events, the U.S. became locked into a cycle of coal, oil, and natural gas consumption. This reliance came at a tremendous cost. Energy insecurity. America remained vulnerable to oil embargoes, price fluctuations, and geopolitical conflicts, leading to wars like the Gulf War in 1991. Environmental damage. Decades of burning fossil fuels contributed to rising carbon emissions, climate change, and pollution that affected public health. Economic burden. Hundreds of billions of dollars were spent annually on importing oil, subsidizing fossil fuel industries, and maintaining energy infrastructure. For decades, the belief persisted that there was no better alternative. Renewable sources like wind and solar had limitations due to their intermittent nature, requiring storage solutions that were costly and inefficient. Nuclear energy, despite its promise, was politically unfeasible. The nation seemed stuck. A new era begins. Geothermal's untapped potential. What if there was a solution that eliminated all the pitfalls of fossil fuels while avoiding the risks of nuclear power? What if there was a way to generate limitless, clean, base-load energy available anywhere in the world at all times? For decades, geothermal energy was dismissed as a niche solution, useful only in volcanic regions like Iceland. The problem wasn't the resource. It was the lack of drilling technology to harness it effectively. Traditional geothermal plants relied on naturally occurring underground reservoirs of steam and hot water, which were rare and geographically limited. But now, thanks to a breakthrough innovation by Ever, geothermal energy is no longer limited to special locations. Using advanced well drilling techniques developed by the oil and gas industry, Ever has created a closed-loop system that captures the Earth's heat anywhere on the planet, from major cities to remote locations. Ever's precision-drilled wells, combined with their proprietary EverRock technology, create a hermetically sealed system that operates like a deep well radiator, continuously cycling fluid to generate electricity. Unlike wind and solar, Geothermal energy provides a constant, uninterrupted power supply, 24/7, 365 days a year. The end of energy wars and embargoes. With geothermal energy available everywhere, the U.S. will no longer need to fight wars over oil, suffer through energy crises, or be subjected to foreign energy embargoes. By transitioning the grid to geothermal power, America can finally achieve true energy independence, ensuring a stable, self-sufficient future. For the first time in history, we are standing at the threshold of a new energy revolution, one that will transform the way we power our homes, businesses, and industries. This isn't science fiction. It's happening now. Chapter 2. The evolution of the U.S. power grid and the roadblocks to change. For over a century, America's power grid has been the backbone of modern civilization, delivering electricity to homes, businesses, and industries across the country. But as revolutionary as the grid was when first built, it is now outdated, fragile, and in desperate need of an upgrade. The good news: a new era of energy independence is within reach. One that eliminates reliance on fossil fuels, prevents grid failures, and ensures affordable electricity for generations to come. But before we explore the solution, let's examine how we got here. The birth of the American power grid. The U.S. power grid was born in the 1880s when Thomas Edison introduced the first commercial power station in New York City. His system relied on direct current (DC) electricity, which had limitations in transmitting power over long distances. Then came Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse, who developed alternating current (AC) technology, allowing electricity to travel farther and more efficiently. This led to the war of currents between Edison's DC and Tesla's AC, with AC ultimately emerging victorious. By the early 1900s, the U.S. began building a vast network of coal-fired power plants and high-voltage transmission lines, creating the foundation of today's national electric grid. The shift to oil, gas, and nuclear power. As America grew, so did its demand for energy. By the mid-20th century, coal remained king, but oil and natural gas started gaining traction due to their efficiency and accessibility. Then came the 1970s, when the OPEC oil embargo forced the U.S. to rethink its energy strategy. In response, America began expanding nuclear power, seen as a long-term solution to energy security. From the 1950s through the 1970s, the U.S. built dozens of nuclear reactors with plans for hundreds more. But after the 3 Mile Island accident, 1979, the Chernobyl disaster, 1986, and Fukushima, 2011, public opposition halted nuclear expansion, leaving the U.S. more dependent than ever on coal, oil, and natural gas. The grid's biggest weakness: aging infrastructure. America's grid was designed for a 20th century world, not the 21st century's growing energy demands. 70% of power lines are over 25 years old. Coal and gas plants are aging, inefficient, and costly to maintain. Extreme weather events cause frequent blackouts and grid failures. One of the most catastrophic failures occurred in Texas, 2021, when a deep freeze caused the myth of scarcity, why we were told energy was limited. For decades, Americans have been told the same story. Energy is scarce. Resources are running out. We must rely on foreign oil to meet our needs. This scarcity narrative has shaped U.S. energy policy, national security decisions, and even wars. But what if scarcity was never the real issue? What if energy abundance has always been possible, but was deliberately suppressed? The oil crisis that wasn't how energy scarcity was manufactured. In the 1970s, Americans lived through one of the most manipulated energy crises in history. The 1973 oil embargo, triggered by OPEC's response to U.S. support for Israel, led to gas rationing and soaring prices. The 1979 oil shock following the Iranian Revolution once again disrupted global oil supply, causing panic at the pump. The 2008 oil price spike, where crude oil reached $147 per barrel, leading to economic turmoil. Each of these events created the illusion of scarcity, reinforcing the idea that the U.S. must remain dependent on fossil fuels. But here's the truth. The world has never run out of oil. In fact, proven reserves have continued to grow. The U.S. is not dependent on foreign oil. Today, it is one of the world's largest producers. Fossil fuels were never the only option. Other energy sources have existed for decades. So, why did the scarcity myth persist? How fossil fuel companies profited from the scarcity myth. The fossil fuel industry has spent over a century shaping public perception to maximize profits and maintain control, controlling supply to manipulate prices. By limiting production or creating artificial shortages, oil companies drive up prices. OPEC has openly admitted to restricting output to maintain higher profits. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve was originally designed to prevent these manipulations, but is now used as a political tool. 2. Lobbying against alternative energy. The fossil fuel industry has fought every major energy breakthrough, from solar in the 1980s to modern-day geothermal. In the 1950s, oil companies purchased and dismantled electric streetcar systems in major U.S. cities to ensure dependence on gasoline-powered vehicles. Fossil fuel corporations invest in renewables, not to advance them, but to slow their development and maintain dominance. 3. Promoting the myth that alternatives aren't ready. For decades, Americans were told solar and wind could never fully replace fossil fuels. Nuclear was initially promoted, but when public fear grew after 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima, it became politically toxic. Geothermal, the most viable, 24/7 clean energy solution, was never even given a chance. The result? A world where the illusion of scarcity kept fossil fuel companies in control while preventing cleaner, cheaper, and more sustainable energy solutions from thriving. The reality: energy is abundant and always has been. The Earth produces more energy than humanity could ever consume. The sun delivers more energy in an hour than the world uses in a year. The challenge has never been producing energy. It has been capturing and storing it efficiently. Advances in solar technology have made it far cheaper and more effective, yet fossil fuel interests continue to resist adoption. 2. The Earth's core provides endless geothermal energy. The heat beneath our feet can power the world for billions of years. Unlike wind and solar, geothermal never stops producing power. It works 24/7, in any weather, in any location. The grid itself has been designed to keep prices high. Utilities control where and how energy is distributed, ensuring that even as production costs drop, consumer prices stay high. Transitioning to geothermal and decentralized energy would mean lower costs and true energy independence, but it would also break the monopolies that control the grid. The turning point: breaking free from the scarcity mindset. The biggest challenge isn't technological, it's psychological. Americans have been conditioned to believe we must rely on fossil fuels. Renewables are unreliable. Energy independence is impossible. But none of this is true. The truth: the U.S. has the resources to be fully energy independent. Geothermal technology can provide unlimited base load power. Once we break free from the scarcity myth, we unlock true energy abundance. The energy revolution isn't about discovering something new. It's about embracing what has always been there. The only question left is, will we seize the opportunity? Chapter 5. The Battle for Energy Independence: Who Wins and Who Loses? For over a century, the battle over energy has been about power, not just electrical power, but economic and political power. Who controls energy? Who profits from it? Who decides how much it costs and who gets access to it? The United States has the resources to be 100% energy independent, but powerful interests have fought to keep the nation dependent on fossil fuels. In this chapter, we expose the winners and losers in the fight for energy independence. The winners. Who profits from energy dependence? 1. Fossil fuel giants, oil, gas, and coal companies. For decades, the world has been locked into a fossil fuel-based energy system that benefits a small handful of corporations. ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, and Shell. Together, these companies generate trillions in revenue every year. Coal, once thought to be in decline, still powers nearly 20% of the U.S. grid because of political and economic inertia. Natural gas, promoted as a cleaner fossil fuel, has surged in popularity, yet methane leaks from gas production are even worse for the climate than coal emissions. These companies don't just produce energy, they control it. 2. Middle Eastern oil cartels, OPEC and foreign interests. For decades, OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, has manipulated oil supply to control global prices. In 1973, the oil embargo sent prices skyrocketing and showed how vulnerable the U.S. was to foreign energy control. In 1990, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait led to the first Gulf War, driven largely by concerns over oil supply. Today, countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Iran use oil and gas as economic weapons, influencing global politics. U.S. dependence on foreign oil means higher prices, more geopolitical instability, and greater military involvement in energy-rich regions. 3. Utility monopolies, the grid controllers. Even when energy production is domestic, utility companies still control distribution. Major utilities, like Duke Energy, Pacific Gas and Electric, and Southern Company, set prices and lobby against competition. In many states, the grid is a regulated monopoly, meaning customers have no choice in where their electricity comes from. Even as renewables and geothermal become cheaper, utilities resist transitioning because they profit from legacy fossil fuel infrastructure. Energy isn't just a resource. It's a business, and one of the most powerful businesses on Earth. The losers. Who suffers under energy dependence? 1. The American consumer. You pay the price. The average American pays higher energy costs because of fossil fuel dependence. Gasoline prices fluctuate wildly, controlled by OPEC, supply chains, and corporate greed. Electric bills keep rising, even though energy production is more efficient than ever. Natural disasters, blackouts, and grid failures, from Texas' 2021 deep freeze to California's rolling blackouts, show how fragile the current system is. And here's the kicker. When energy prices rise, everything else rises. Food, transportation, housing, and manufacturing costs all go up. 2. The U.S. military. Fighting wars over oil. Since World War II, the U.S. has spent trillions of dollars and countless lives protecting oil supply lines. The first Gulf War, 1991, defending Kuwait's oil fields from Saddam Hussein. The Iraq War, 2003 to 2011, though framed as a fight against weapons of mass destruction, control over Middle Eastern oil was a major strategic factor. U.S. military bases in the Middle East, many exist to ensure stable oil flow to global markets. Energy dependence means endless military involvement in unstable regions, costing lives, resources, and global stability. 3. The environment. The planet pays the ultimate price. Fossil fuel extraction and combustion are catastrophic for the environment. Air pollution from coal and gas plants contributes to asthma, lung disease, and premature deaths. Oil spills, from Exxon Valdez to Deepwater Horizon, cause massive ecological disasters. Fracking contaminates groundwater, increases seismic activity, and devastates local ecosystems. While we're being told we need fossil fuels, the truth is, we're paying an enormous price for them. The transition to energy independence. Who will win in the future? The fight isn't over. A new generation of energy technologies is emerging, and those who embrace them will win big. 1. Geothermal energy, the future of clean, infinite power. Geothermal power plants are already online, but with Ever's closed-loop system, they can be deployed anywhere in the world. No fuel required, just heat from the Earth itself. Lower costs, zero emissions, 24/7 base load power, solving every major issue of energy production today. 2. Decentralized energy. Consumers take back control. Imagine a world where every home, business, and community can generate its own power without reliance on big utilities. Microgrids and localized energy production will free Americans from monopolies and price manipulation. 3. The U.S. economy. Trillions in new wealth and jobs. A geothermal-powered grid means cheaper electricity, driving down costs for businesses and consumers. Energy independence means U.S. dollars stay in the U.S. rather than flowing to oil-rich nations. The transition will create millions of high-paying jobs in drilling, infrastructure, and engineering. The battle for energy independence isn't just about energy. It's about the future of our economy, national security, and way of life. The question is, who will lead the transition? Will we remain dependent on fossil fuels and foreign energy, or will we embrace true independence? The choice is ours. Chapter 6. The Economics of Energy Independence, a $50 trillion opportunity. Energy isn't just about keeping the lights on. It's the backbone of the entire economy. Every factory, every home, every business, every vehicle, everything runs on energy. And right now, the U.S. is bleeding trillions of dollars by remaining dependent on fossil fuels. In this chapter, we'll break down how energy dependence is costing Americans trillions, how transitioning to geothermal energy will create a $50 trillion economic transformation, how energy independence can be the greatest investment in American history, the hidden cost of energy dependence. Most people don't realize how much money is lost due to energy inefficiency, fossil fuel volatility, and outdated infrastructure. $1 trillion per year in oil and gas costs. The U.S. spends over $1 trillion annually on fossil fuels, most of which goes to foreign oil imports and subsidies to big oil. Energy-related military spending. The U.S. has spent over $8 trillion since 2001 on military operations related to securing global oil supply lines. Blackouts and grid failures cost $150 billion per year. Aging energy infrastructure leads to catastrophic failures, from Texas' deep freeze to California's rolling blackouts. Fossil fuel pollution costs $800 billion per year in healthcare. Respiratory illnesses, heart disease, and early deaths caused by coal and gas pollution put a massive strain on the healthcare system. When you add it all up, the true cost of energy dependence exceeds $10 trillion per decade. The good news: we don't have to pay this bill anymore. Geothermal, the economic engine of the future. The transition to geothermal energy isn't just about fixing the grid. It's about creating an entirely new economy. By replacing fossil fuels with scalable, closed-loop geothermal energy, the U.S. can eliminate foreign energy dependence, keeping trillions of dollars in the U.S. economy rather than sending it to oil-producing nations. Reduce electricity costs by 50% or more. Geothermal is cheaper than coal, gas, and nuclear, driving down energy bills. Create millions of new jobs. The transition will require millions of engineers, drillers, construction workers, and technicians, building a new 21st century energy infrastructure. Boost U.S. manufacturing. Cheap, clean energy will allow America to outcompete China in industrial production. The $50 trillion energy revolution. Let's break down the numbers. The U.S. electric grid generates $491 billion per year, 2023 data. Over 10 years, that's $4.9 trillion in revenue from electricity sales. Over 100 years amortized, the grid will generate $49 trillion in revenue. Subtract $25 trillion for build-out bonds to fund the transition. That leaves $24 trillion in profit, which can be used to pay off the national debt and reinvest in America. That's right, energy independence isn't just possible. It's the biggest financial opportunity in American history. A self-paying investment, $9 return for every $1 spent. Investing in new infrastructure might seem expensive, but here's the reality. For every $1 the U.S. invests in infrastructure, it generates over $9 in economic return. The interstate highway system, a $500 billion inflation-adjusted investment, led to $5 trillion in economic growth. The Transcontinental Railroad, funded by government bonds, transformed America into an economic superpower. The New Deal's rural electrification program brought electricity to every American home, unlocking millions of new jobs. Energy independence through geothermal is the next great infrastructure revolution, one that will pay for itself many times over. Who will own the future? The transition to clean, independent energy isn't just about economics. It's about who controls the wealth of the 21st century. Right now, fossil fuel companies own energy. Oil companies like ExxonMobil and Chevron rake in hundreds of billions in profits. Utility monopolies control the grid, limiting competition. Foreign oil producers dictate global energy prices. But with geothermal energy, the U.S. can democratize energy ownership, allowing individuals, businesses, and local governments to produce their own power. Eliminate corporate monopolies by breaking the fossil fuel stranglehold on energy pricing. Unleash a wave of new businesses as energy becomes cheaper and more accessible. America's energy independence revolution begins now. This is the moment in history when we choose: stay dependent on fossil fuels, foreign oil, and energy monopolies, or take control of our own energy future, unlocking trillions in new wealth. The U.S. has the technology, the resources, and the economic power to make this transition. All that's left is the will to act. Chapter 7: Breaking Free from Energy Monopolies, the True Capitalist Revolution. For over a century, a handful of corporations have controlled America's energy. The same oil, gas, and utility giants that dictated energy prices in the 20th century are now trying to control the transition to clean power in the 21st. But this time, they won't win. With Everse geothermal technology, we can break free from energy monopolies, ushering in true capitalism, where every company, every entrepreneur, and even local governments can own their own energy production. In this chapter, we expose how big oil and utility monopolies control America's energy, how crony capitalism has prevented true competition, how geothermal can restore free market energy and create a level playing field. The Energy Monopoly Playbook. For decades, energy giants have rigged the game to maintain their monopoly. 1. Control of infrastructure. Oil companies own the pipelines, refineries, and gas stations, ensuring they dictate fuel prices. Utility monopolies control the power grid, meaning no competitor can enter the market without using their system. Regulatory capture. These companies write the very laws that regulate them, ensuring they stay in power. 2. Government subsidies and corporate welfare. Fossil fuel companies receive $20 billion per year in direct U.S. subsidies. Utility companies use public funding to maintain their grid, but keep all profits private. The industry lobbies Congress to block competition from decentralized power sources like rooftop solar and independent wind projects. 3. Price manipulation and artificial scarcity. OPEC nations collude to control oil supply, keeping prices high. Utility companies artificially limit capacity to justify rate hikes. Natural gas suppliers export U.S. gas overseas, raising domestic prices. This isn't capitalism, it's crony capitalism. A system rigged to benefit a few corporations while the rest of the economy pays the price. How geothermal ends the monopoly era. For the first time in history, a truly competitive energy source is emerging, one that big oil and big utilities cannot control. 1. Geothermal energy is everywhere. Unlike oil, which is limited to specific regions, geothermal energy is beneath every city, every state, and every country. With Ever's closed-loop system, any community can drill directly beneath their own land and generate power. No need for foreign oil, pipelines, or fuel shipments, just heat from the earth itself. This makes it impossible for a few companies to control access to energy. 2. A decentralized power grid. Instead of relying on one massive grid controlled by utilities, cities and companies can generate their own power. Small businesses, entrepreneurs, and local governments can produce and sell electricity without needing a middleman. This means energy independence for every American, not just the corporate elite. 3. The true free market energy revolution. The fossil fuel era was dominated by monopolies, but the geothermal era will be defined by open competition. Oil companies can't dictate supply. Any company can drill and produce heat. Utility monopolies can't control pricing. Competition will drive costs down. The government won't need to subsidize energy. Private investment will take over. For the first time, true capitalism will enter the energy sector, driving innovation, competition, and lower prices. How Ever's model prevents a new monopoly. Some critics might ask, won't Ever just become another monopoly? The answer is no, because the business model prevents it. Ever's licensing structure is open to any company. Oil drillers, solar companies, wind energy firms, and private investors can all buy in. No single entity can control geothermal energy. There's no physical resource to hoard like oil or gas. Market forces will keep prices low. With multiple players in the space, competition will thrive. This is the anti-standard oil model. Instead of hoarding control, Ever's technology will enable thousands of energy producers, ensuring a true capitalist energy revolution. What happens when energy is no longer a monopoly? Imagine a future where businesses pay half as much for energy, leading to lower prices for goods and services. Millions of Americans work in new energy jobs, not beholden to oil companies. The U.S. is energy independent, never again held hostage by OPEC or foreign governments. Electricity is as common as the internet. Cheap, unlimited, and available everywhere. This is what happens when we break free from the monopoly system, a future worth fighting for. The transition to geothermal isn't just about cleaner energy, it's about restoring economic freedom. No more corporate-controlled energy. No more price manipulation. No more dependence on foreign powers. Just clean, limitless, affordable energy, owned by the people, for the people. The energy revolution isn't coming, it's already here. Are we ready to seize it? Chapter 8. The Economic Boom. How geothermal will create trillions of dollars and millions of jobs. For decades, America's energy policies have been dictated by scarcity. Scarcity of oil, scarcity of natural gas, scarcity of jobs. But the next great economic boom will be fueled by abundance, and it begins with geothermal energy. In this chapter, we'll explore how Ever's geothermal technology will create millions of new jobs, why the energy transition will be the biggest economic boom since the internet, how workers from the oil and gas industry will benefit the most, a $25 trillion industry waiting to explode. Energy isn't just a necessity, it's the foundation of the global economy. Every sector, from manufacturing to transportation to technology, depends on energy. The U.S. electricity market is already a $491 billion per year industry. Over a 10-year build-out, that's $4.9 trillion in revenue. Over 100 years, that's $49 trillion in energy production, more than double the size of the U.S. economy. A nationwide geothermal expansion could generate millions of high-paying jobs. This isn't a niche industry. It's the future of the American economy. The next industrial revolution. Historically, every major technological breakthrough has created new industries and jobs. The railroads in the 1800s transformed America into an industrial powerhouse. The automobile industry in the 1900s created millions of jobs and reshaped cities. The internet in the 2000s unleashed trillions in new wealth. Geothermal is next. Instead of importing oil, we'll build power plants domestically. Instead of subsidizing fossil fuels, we'll invest in local job creation. Instead of outsourcing energy production, we'll keep wealth within our borders. The shift to geothermal will be the largest job-creating event in modern history. Millions of new jobs across every sector. Here's how geothermal will supercharge the U.S. job market. 1. Oil and gas workers will lead the transition. For the first time in history, energy workers won't lose jobs in a transition. They'll gain new, higher-paying ones. Drillers and engineers can shift directly into geothermal well development. Oil service companies can pivot to geothermal maintenance and operations. Pipeline workers can adapt to new underground heat distribution networks. Refinery technicians can manage geothermal power plants. This is not a replacement for oil and gas workers. It's an expansion of their opportunities. 2. Construction and manufacturing will boom. Thousands of geothermal plants will need to be built nationwide. Steel, concrete, and drilling equipment manufacturing will surge. Electrical engineers and power plant operators will be in high demand. 3. Energy independence will reshape the economy. Lower energy costs will drive massive manufacturing growth. American businesses will no longer be at the mercy of foreign oil prices. Every sector of the economy will benefit from stable, low-cost energy. When you decentralize energy production, you decentralize economic opportunity, bringing prosperity to every corner of America. The economic chain reaction, $9 return for every $1 invested. For every $1 invested in infrastructure, the economy gains $9 in return. That's not speculation. It's historical fact. The Eisenhower highway system. For every $1 spent on roads, the economy gains $6 in economic growth. The New Deal's rural electrification program. For every $1 spent on power lines, businesses grew by 900%. The internet boom. For every $1 spent on fiber optics, the economy gained $20 in digital commerce. A nationwide geothermal expansion will be even bigger. $1 trillion invested equals $9 trillion in economic activity. 10 million new jobs across energy, construction, engineering, and tech. America's first true energy surplus, with unlimited, cheap power for businesses and homes. This is how infrastructure investments pay off, not just in jobs, but in national prosperity. A 21st century energy workforce. The jobs of the future won't be in coal mines or offshore oil rigs. They'll be in geothermal drilling and maintenance, heat transfer engineering and underground fluid dynamics, power grid modernization and smart energy systems, advanced materials and deep earth energy research. These aren't temporary jobs. They're permanent, high-paying careers in a sector that will never run out of fuel. What happens when energy becomes unlimited? When energy scarcity ends, new possibilities open up. Manufacturing returns to America. With cheaper power, factories relocate back home. Innovation accelerates. With unlimited energy, new industries like AI, quantum computing, and advanced robotics thrive. A new era of prosperity begins. Low cost, stable energy drives down prices across the economy. This isn't just an energy transition, it's an economic revolution, a historic opportunity for America. The question isn't if geothermal will change the world. The question is, will America lead or will we fall behind? China is already investing billions in clean energy. Europe is rapidly expanding geothermal capacity. The U.S. has the largest geothermal potential on Earth, but we must act now. This is our moment to seize economic leadership in the energy sector. What comes next? The transition to geothermal energy isn't just about fixing the grid. It's about rebuilding America's economic foundation. Millions of new jobs, trillions in economic growth, energy independence for the next 10,000 years. The energy revolution is here. The only question is, will we lead it? Chapter 9. Energy Independence. No more wars over oil. For over a century, America's foreign policy has been shaped, some would say controlled, by one thing: energy dependence. Wars, alliances, trade agreements, even economic crashes have all been tied to one brutal reality. The United States has needed foreign oil to survive. But that ends now. With geothermal, America will never have to fight another war over oil. We will no longer be at the mercy of Middle Eastern cartels, Russian gas pipelines, or global energy markets. For the first time in modern history, we can have true energy independence, and that means economic and geopolitical freedom. The hidden cost of oil: blood and trillions of dollars. Since World War II, energy dependence has dragged America into endless foreign conflicts, costing millions of lives and trillions of dollars. The 1973 oil embargo: OPEC cut off the U.S., triggering a recession and gas shortages. The Gulf War, 1990 to 1991, fought to protect oil reserves in Kuwait. The Iraq War, 2003 to 2011, many believe the war was as much about securing oil fields as it was about toppling Saddam Hussein. The War on Terror. The U.S. has spent $8 trillion in the Middle East, much of it tied to maintaining energy security. Every president, Republican or Democrat, has had to navigate the energy trap. Dependence on foreign oil has dictated who we fight, who we ally with, and where we spend trillions of taxpayer dollars. The U.S. military and the true cost of protecting oil. Most Americans don't realize that a huge portion of our military budget isn't just about defense. It's about protecting global energy supplies. The U.S. Navy patrols the Persian Gulf, ensuring Middle Eastern oil flows uninterrupted. The U.S. maintains bases in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Kuwait, all near key oil fields. The Pentagon has called climate change and energy security strategic threats to national security. In 2023, the U.S. defense budget was $877 billion. If we eliminate energy dependence, we can redirect hundreds of billions of dollars away from securing foreign oil and toward American infrastructure, healthcare, and innovation. What happens when America no longer needs foreign oil? The geopolitical map changes overnight. We no longer need to police the Middle East. No more oil wars. No more funding unstable regimes. We don't have to rely on OPEC. Saudi Arabia, Russia, and others lose their stranglehold on energy prices. We can tell hostile nations to keep their oil. No more economic blackmail over energy. Instead of being a global energy consumer, the U.S. becomes a global energy leader, exporting excess power, building new trade alliances, and reshaping the world economy. Russia and China, the new energy battle. Russia's greatest weapon isn't its military, it's its gas supply. Europe is dependent on Russian energy, giving Putin leverage over NATO. China is racing ahead in renewables, investing $500 billion in clean energy to dominate global markets. The U.S. can outcompete both, but only if we move aggressively on geothermal. By leading in geothermal, America seizes the energy advantage, weakening Russia's oil grip and ensuring China doesn't control the clean energy market. The $24 trillion question: what do we do with the savings? If America no longer spends trillions on securing foreign oil, where does that money go? Rebuilding U.S. infrastructure, modernizing roads, bridges, and power grids. Investing in science and technology, AI, space exploration, biotech, and next-gen industries. Paying down the national debt. A geothermal-powered America generates trillions in economic surplus. By reclaiming energy independence, we don't just avoid wars, we rebuild the nation. A historic turning point. For the first time in over a century, the U.S. has a choice. Continue spending trillions protecting oil reserves, fighting wars, and depending on foreign energy. Invest in limitless, American-made geothermal energy and end the cycle forever. This isn't just an energy policy, it's a national security revolution. The next time a president gives a speech about why America must go to war, imagine if they didn't have to mention energy security at all. That's the future geothermal can give us. Chapter 10. The Roadmap to 100% Geothermal. How we get there. The transition to energy independence isn't a fantasy, it's a plan. America has the resources, technology, and workforce to replace fossil fuels with limitless geothermal energy. The only thing missing is a clear roadmap. That's exactly what this chapter lays out. By following a 10-year national strategy, we can build a geothermal-powered grid, one that is cheaper, cleaner, and permanently energy independent. Step 1. The National Geothermal Act, Year 1. Declare geothermal a national priority. The U.S. must recognize that energy security is as vital as national defense. Pass a National Geothermal Act. This legislation will streamline regulations, fast-track drilling permits, and secure federal funding for rapid deployment. Establish public-private partnerships. Companies like Ever, along with oil and gas drillers, will have full incentive to pivot into geothermal. This will be America's Manhattan Project for energy, a full-scale national effort. Step 2. Rapid-scale drilling, years 1 to 5. Convert existing oil and gas infrastructure. The same drilling technology used for fracking can be repurposed for closed-loop geothermal wells. Launch 1,000 test wells. Within 2 years, geothermal sites in key states, Texas, California, Nevada, Pennsylvania, will be operational. Mandate federal and state procurement. The U.S. government and states will be required to buy geothermal power for military bases, government buildings, and state utilities. By year 5, we'll have proven success, eliminating doubt, and attracting massive private sector investment. Step 3. National grid integration, years 5 to 7. Upgrade the electric grid. A modern high-voltage grid will allow geothermal energy to power every home and business nationwide. Shut down coal plants first. The dirtiest, least efficient plants will be replaced with base load geothermal power. Use natural gas as a transition fuel. Until geothermal is fully built out, existing natural gas plants will ensure grid stability. By year 7, geothermal will be supplying 40% of U.S. electricity. Step 4. Full transition and global expansion, years 8 to 10. Scale geothermal to 100% of U.S. energy needs. No more fossil fuels, no more reliance on foreign oil. Turn America into a net energy exporter. Other nations will buy clean U.S. geothermal power, strengthening our economy. License the technology worldwide, or partnering. Geothermal will become America's #1 global energy export, with U.S. companies leading the market. By year 10, the U.S. will have total energy independence, saving trillions of dollars while eliminating carbon emissions. The $49 trillion energy revolution. This plan isn't just about clean power, it's about economic transformation. Current U.S. energy revenue, $491 billion per year. 10-year geothermal revenue, $4.9 trillion. 100-year revenue projection, $49 trillion, enough to pay off the national debt and rebuild America's infrastructure. This isn't just an energy transition, it's the largest economic opportunity in U.S. history. The only thing standing in the way. The technology is ready. The economic case is undeniable. The only barrier is political will. Fossil fuel interests will fight this. Lobbyists will spread misinformation. But history has shown that when America commits to innovation, nothing can stop it. We built the railroads, highways, the internet, and the space program. Now, it's time to build a geothermal-powered nation. This isn't just an energy revolution, it's America's next great chapter. Chapter 11. The 10-year plan, funding America's energy future. We've seen the roadmap for transitioning to geothermal energy. Now let's break down the financials. Can the U.S. afford this transition? Not only can we afford it, we can't afford not to. The current energy system costs trillions while keeping America dependent on fossil fuels, foreign energy, and rising electricity costs. Switching to geothermal isn't just cleaner, it's the biggest financial opportunity in history. The National Electric Cooperative, a new energy model. The foundation of this transition will be a federal National Electric Cooperative, NEC, a non-profit entity responsible for building, managing, and maintaining the new geothermal-powered grid. The NEC will operate like rural electric cooperatives, but on a national scale, partnering with existing electric co-ops, integrating geothermal into their power supply. Investor-owned utilities, offering them a stake in the transition. Transmission carriers, modernizing and expanding the power grid. Large and small construction firms, providing contracts to build the infrastructure. Oil, gas, coal, nuclear, hydro, solar, and wind companies, allowing them to invest in geothermal and remain energy players. State and city governments, ensuring local buy-in and job creation. The NEC will be self-funded through geothermal energy revenue, meaning it won't be reliant on taxpayer dollars in the long run. How the NEC funds itself: union pension investments and energy bonds. Union pension fund investment. Labor unions can invest a portion of their pension funds into the NEC. This ensures that union workers own part of America's energy future while securing strong retirement benefits. 2. Federal energy bonds. The U.S. government can issue energy infrastructure bonds, just like it did with war bonds in World War II. These bonds allow private citizens, institutions, and foreign investors to help fund the NEC while receiving guaranteed returns. Unlike traditional energy companies, the NEC will reinvest profits into infrastructure rather than paying shareholder dividends. This hybrid funding approach, a mix of union pension funds, energy bonds, and geothermal revenue, ensures that the NEC can scale up without placing a burden on taxpayers. The value of the U.S. electric grid. Let's start with the numbers. In 2023, the U.S. electric grid generated $491 billion in revenue from retail electricity sales. That was a 16% increase from the previous year, showing the growing value of energy. Now let's project that across the next 100 years with geothermal as the primary energy source. The $49 trillion energy economy. This means that over 100 years, the U.S. will generate $49 trillion from a fully geothermal-powered grid. Even after subtracting $25 trillion to build out geothermal plants, upgrade the grid, and invest in energy storage, we're left with $24 trillion in surplus revenue. Paying off the national debt. What could we do with an extra $24 trillion? Pay off the national debt, making America fiscally strong again. Lower electricity costs, saving every household thousands per year. Rebuild U.S. infrastructure, investing in roads, bridges, and high-speed rail. Create and fund national health care for all, without raising taxes. Instead of spending trillions importing oil, the U.S. would become energy self-sufficient while reinvesting energy profits back into the country. Why this works: the power of infrastructure investment. History has proven that investing in infrastructure pays off massively. For every $1 the U.S. invests in infrastructure, the economy receives more than $9 in return. The interstate highway system cost $500 billion, adjusted for inflation, but added $6 trillion to the economy. The internet and tech boom started with government-funded R&D, leading to trillions in new industries. The U.S. space program led to over $2 trillion in spin-off technologies, including GPS and solar panels. Building a geothermal-powered grid will have an even greater impact, generating tens of trillions in new economic growth while making America energy independent. Final step: a national commitment. This isn't just a theory. The numbers prove that geothermal is cheaper, cleaner, and more profitable than fossil fuels. The technology is ready. The financial case is undeniable. The only thing missing is national leadership. If the U.S. commits to this 10-year plan, we will end our dependence on fossil fuels, eliminate energy-driven wars, create millions of new jobs, strengthen our economy with trillions in new revenue. This is America's energy independence revolution. The time to act is now. Chapter 12. The workforce of the future, creating millions of high-paying jobs and trillions of dollars in wealth for the U.S. Energy isn't just about keeping the lights on. It's about jobs. For over a century, America's workforce has been built around coal mines, oil rigs, natural gas plants, and power stations. These industries created millions of jobs, many of them high-paying union jobs that provided families with stability, pensions, and generational wealth. But today, those industries are shrinking. Coal plants are shutting down. Oil and gas drilling is in decline due to automation and global market shifts. Energy jobs are moving overseas. The result: tens of thousands of energy workers are losing their livelihoods. Geothermal energy doesn't just replace lost jobs, it expands the workforce. It ensures that America's energy workers aren't left behind in the transition to clean energy. Geothermal energy equals millions of new jobs. The transition to a fully geothermal-powered grid will require an energy workforce unlike anything America has ever seen. Drilling and well construction, building hundreds of thousands of geothermal wells across the U.S. Power plant development, constructing thousands of next-generation geothermal power plants. Transmission expansion, upgrading and modernizing the electric grid to distribute 100% geothermal power. Manufacturing and supply chain, producing turbines, well casings, and geothermal heat exchangers. Maintenance and operations, running and maintaining America's new geothermal energy infrastructure. Every step of this process requires a massive skilled workforce. How many jobs will this create? Let's compare geothermal to other industries. The oil and gas industry employs about 700,000 people in the U.S. The coal industry once employed 800,000 plus, but is now down to 40,000 workers. The electric utility sector employs around 2.2 million people. Now let's look at what happens when we transition to a nationwide geothermal grid. Geothermal drilling and well construction, 1.5 to 2 million jobs. Power plant construction and operations, 1 million jobs. Grid expansion and transmission upgrades, 1.2 million jobs. Manufacturing and supply chain, 500,000 jobs. Ongoing maintenance and workforce growth, 800,000 jobs. Total new jobs created, 5 to 6 million. That's more jobs than the oil, gas, and coal industries combined, and they won't disappear. Unlike fossil fuels, geothermal energy provides stable, permanent jobs because the Earth's heat never runs out. Union labor, ensuring good wages and benefits. To guarantee high wages, strong benefits, and long-term job security, all geothermal development under the National Electric Cooperative, NEC, will be union-built and union-operated. IBW, electrical workers, building and maintaining the electric grid. UA, pipe fitters and welders, installing and maintaining geothermal piping. IUE, operating engineers, running heavy drilling rigs and geothermal excavation. USW, steelworkers, fabricating steel geothermal power plant buildings. Union building and construction trades, overseeing large-scale infrastructure projects. AFL-CIO and other major unions, ensuring worker protections, fair contracts, and pensions. This guarantees that geothermal jobs will pay top wages, just like fossil fuel jobs once did. The bottom line, a geothermal workforce built by union labor means higher wages, safer working conditions, and stable careers for millions of American workers. Retraining America's energy workers. One of the biggest fears surrounding the energy transition is job displacement. What happens to oil drillers when drilling rigs shut down? What happens to coal miners when the last coal plants close? What happens to fossil fuel power plant workers when they're no longer needed? The answer: they get retrained and immediately put to work in geothermal energy. The skills used in oil, gas, and coal translate perfectly into geothermal energy jobs. Oil and gas drillers, geothermal drillers. Coal plant workers, geothermal plant operators. Pipeline workers, geothermal piping and infrastructure technicians. Transmission line workers, grid expansion and upgrade specialists. Heavy equipment operators, drilling rig and construction machine operators. By investing in worker retraining programs, we ensure that no energy worker is left behind in the transition. Job security for generations. Geothermal isn't like fossil fuels, where jobs boom and bust based on market conditions. Oil and gas jobs disappear when prices drop. Coal jobs vanish as power plants shut down. Renewable jobs in wind and solar are often temporary and seasonal. Geothermal is permanent. The heat beneath our feet never runs out. Once a geothermal well is drilled, it lasts for centuries. Power plants require ongoing operations, maintenance, and expansions. This means a lifetime of job security for America's energy workforce. The future of American energy equals the future of American jobs. By transitioning to a nationwide geothermal grid, we create 5 to 6 million new jobs, permanent, high-paying union careers, a stable, growing energy workforce. This isn't just about clean energy. It's about securing America's economic future. By investing in geothermal, we ensure that the next generation of American workers will have good jobs, strong wages, and long-term security. This is how we build the workforce of the future. Chapter 12 Summary. Geothermal will create 5 to 6 million permanent jobs. It will replace lost fossil fuel jobs with high-paying union careers. Every energy worker will have an opportunity to retrain and transition. This is America's biggest job creation opportunity in history. This is the future of American energy and the future of American jobs. Call to action. The time to act is now. America stands at a crossroads. We can either cling to the past, watching as energy jobs disappear and our grid remains vulnerable, or we can lead the world into a new era of clean, American-made energy and economic prosperity. We are calling on leaders across every sector to take immediate action. President Donald J. Trump, you have the power to cement your legacy as the president who secured America's energy independence forever. We urge you to champion this initiative, rally Congress, and sign the National Geothermal Act and the National Electric Grid Cooperative Act into law to unleash a geothermal revolution that will power our nation for centuries. Republicans and Democrats in Congress, this is not a partisan issue. It's an American issue. We need 2 bipartisan bills written, voted yes on, and presented to our president to sign into law. Those 2 laws will fund and launch the National Electric Grid Cooperative Act and the National Geothermal Act in order to fast-track permitting and building the geothermal energy and grid infrastructure that will power our economy, create millions of jobs, and end our reliance on coal, oil, and gas. Union leaders, this is the biggest job creation opportunity in U.S. history. Work with the bipartisan legislatures to help them write the National Geothermal Act and the National Electric Grid Cooperative Act bills to ensure our seat at the table is secure and union-built, union-operated and union-maintained, guaranteeing millions of high-paying, long-term careers for your members. Oil, gas, and coal industry. Don't fight the future. Own it. The geothermal industry needs your expertise, workforce, and infrastructure experience. Shift your company's capital and human resources into partnering with EVER to build the national geothermal infrastructure and ensure your legacy continues in the next great energy boom that will secure our nation's energy and economy for thousands of years. Wall Street investment firms and investors, trillions of dollars will be made in the build-out of America's geothermal energy infrastructure. Get ahead of the curve by investing in the energy bonds and the visionary partnering companies that will lead this revolution. All media, podcasters, and social influencers, use your platforms to educate the public. This is not a theory or a pipe dream. It's a real plan that has been implemented in Canada, Germany, and India, and can be implemented here in the U.S. to build the National Geothermal Power System and National Electric Grid Cooperative that will transform America into an economic powerhouse. We need every American to demand that Congress work together in a bipartisanship spirit to draft and vote to pass both a National Geothermal Act, National Electric Grid Cooperative Act, and that President Trump sign them into law. The moment is now. The solution is here. The future is geothermal. Acknowledgements. I would like to acknowledge ChatGPT, a groundbreaking AI tool, for its role in helping me organize, refine, and enhance the development of this book. AI has become an incredible partner for human potential, allowing us to achieve more faster. This book is dedicated to the workers, engineers, and visionaries who will build America's energy future, and to our national leaders who will have the spirit of what it really means to be both a true patriot and true capitalist to vote to secure our energy and our economy, securing our independence, and ensuring prosperity for generations to come. Yours sincerely, in this great endeavor to champion the National Geothermal Act and National Electric Grid Cooperative Act that will create the true independence and vast wealth our nation has ready before us. Let's do it. Ken Howard, 2025.